Welcome to another edition of Talkin' Hoops, where we're breaking down the local boys high school basketball scene. Mark Kern, joined by Tim Bielik and David Cassilo. How are we doing?
Hi, Mark. How's it going, man?
Not too bad. Obviously, another big weekend in basketball. Villa Angela St. Joseph, real quick, just lost to Oak Hill Academy, 76-72. They were up most of that game, but really a great showing for Northeast Ohio. And let's go ahead and just talk about one of those teams. When you look before at the teams at top of the poll, undefeated, Lorain, Villa Angela St. Joseph before today, and St-Vincent-St-Mary, who's got the toughest remaining, maybe the toughest game this week?
Well, it's a little cheap now, but I was going to go with VSJ. They not only the Oak Hill game, they've got Central Catholic on Friday, they've got McDuffie School on Saturday, so it was a loaded week for them. I sort of expected that they would lose maybe one of those. They played really well against Oak Hill, but that was the toughest week that I thought.
And Tim?
I'm going to go with Lorain. You know, they got a busy week as well. They got two ranked teams this week. You know, they got to go play Medina on Tuesday night, and then Friday night that big game at home against Bedford, in a game which I think could be between the two best teams in the LAL. And obviously we'll talk to Pete Priola of Bedford soon. But, you know, Lorain, this is another week we're going to find out how good the Titans are. They look pretty good against Warrensville, so we'll see what they do this week against another tough slate.
All right, and we've kind of talked about them throughout the show this year. East Tech, this is a team that scored 114 points last week. Can they get back to Columbus?
I think they can. I mean, the team it had some bumps in the road early in the year, but they've got the three-headed monster of Corey Cole, Markel Johnson, and Anthony Carmen, and I think when you got three great players, you have a chance to go very far.
I'm going to say no, only because I think the road to get there is just so difficult when you look at the teams in that blended district with Garfield, Shaker, Menor, all playing tremendous basketball at this stage. It's just going to be hard for anybody to do. Whoever comes out of that group is going to have earned it, no question. But I think East Tech, you know, they got there before. I'm just not sure. I think they can, but I don't think they will at this point.
All right, and then let's talk about one of the other undefeated teams, St. Vincent-St-Mary. I think you guys obviously going into the year thought they'd be a pretty good team, but what they're doing has been tremendous, undefeated, beating all these very, very good teams. When you look at that team, start with you, Tim, who's the guy that has to play well for St. Vincent-St-Mary to be as good as they can be?
I think it's got to be Jabri Blunt. We know about St. V how it's kind of a guard-oriented team. You obviously have those guards with Josh Williams, Henry Badley, and now R.J. Jones, who's eligible and he's playing. But the difference has got to be, you know, Jabri Blunt in the middle. He's got to be the man who controls the paint on both ends of the floor. He's got to really play well, and he did that on Friday night against Dayton Dunbar with 26 points in a really impressive win against a team that I said was probably another contender in Division II. That's a huge statement, and that shows how important Jabri Blunt is to the St. V team.
Dave?
I said the same thing. I mean, when you look at Blunt, he's the player in the front court that needs to play well, and if he gets in foul trouble or he's hurt or he's not playing or for whatever reason, they're going to suffer against bigger teams.
And I think he showed that in that game against Dunbar, Tim. Josh Williams didn't have his normal scoring output, so someone had to step up, and Williams definitely had a big game. Let's go look at some of the top conferences competition, and let's start with the Southwestern Conference. Who do you like in that?
I got to go with Brecksville, coming off this win against Berea Mid-Park over the weekend. I mean, Brecksville is playing well. Luke Cipolla is doing a great job, and they seem to be coming together right now.
Tim?
I'm going to disagree. Despite the loss, I still got the Titans because I feel like they have the best player in the conference right now, Nolan Garrity. You know, they're going through a rough stretch with back-to-back losses. I feel there's lots of time, though, to right the ship, to straighten things out, and I feel like, you know, they have the experience and the talent to repeat as conference champions.
All right, another good conference, the West Shore Conference. David?
I got to go with Bay. I mean, this is a team that's really taken off. I think they've won 8 straight games. They had players that were coming over from the football team and the soccer team that made deep runs, and now they're healthy, they're in shape, and they're winning.
I'm going to disagree again. I got to go with Lakewood, you know, the team that won it last year. And again, it's experience. You know, you got guys like Wes Gerhardt, Nick Porter have had good seasons, but it's still amazing that run the West Shore Conference. Heading into Friday night, last Friday night, you had 6 of the 8 teams separated by 1 game.
Yeah.
6 of 8 separated by 1 game right now. Bay and Lakewood are at the top right now, tied for first place.
Leary Catholic.
Yeah, Leary Catholic's having a good year. Avon's having a solid year. There's 6 really good teams in that conference this year, and you know, talking to a bunch of the coaches on the West Shore Conference, they knew this conference was going to be deep. It's just amazing to see how it's played out.
I think the best thing is you guys have a little bit of disagreement there, so
Yeah,
it really
finally.
shows. Yes,
Yeah, it only took a few weeks to get some debate going. I love
how
it.
competitive these conferences really are. All right, now let's go. Maybe the most enjoyable part of basketball for the fans is the dunk. If we had a dunk contest in Northeast Ohio, who would you pick to win?
Well, this is tough. I mean, I almost went with Carlton Bragg, but I'm going to go with Tervel Beck. He's been known to throw down some windmill dunks in traffic during the game. I mean, just a tremendous athlete, and I'll go with him.
No, I originally was going to say Isama, but I'm going to go with Devon Andrews because I've seen him in a dunk contest a couple years ago at the Lorain County All-Star Game. He had a nice one where he threw one off the back wall and he just flushed it down. It was probably the best dunk of the night. He's got just that ability to get up there and throw down with some power.
I would say Markel Johnson from East Tech if I was picking. Sure. That would definitely be my pick. All right, and now tomorrow, some big games definitely on the schedule. If there's one game you're looking forward to, Dave, what is it?
Oh, a game you're going to be at, actually, Lorain and Medina. This is a game, another test for Lorain this week. They've got Bedford on Friday, but first they have to win on the road at Medina. They've got good size, Lorain, but I want to see how they match up with John Teskey, who's playing a lot better, and you can't leave these shooters open on Medina.
Yeah, and for all the ranked teams we have in this poll, I'm going to go with a game featuring two unranked teams. I'm going to go with Bay and Normandy, two are probably the hotter teams right now. Dave, you mentioned that Bay's won 8 straight games. Mm-hmm. Normandy had a big double overtime win against Parma, a 35-point night from Troy Massa. Normandy has been in the top 25, so this could potentially be a game where the winner sneaks into the poll next week.
All right, and final question before we are joined by Bedford coach Pete Priola, the best duo in the area.
I'm going to go with my best dunker, Tervel Beck, and I'm going to add Antoine Lillard. It's just, they're tough to stop. They're both guys that I think are averaging around 20 points a night right now, but there's a lot of good duos out there.
Yeah, I'm going to play on a similar tone with Dave. I'm going to go with my best dunker, Devon Andrews. I'm going to go with his wing teammate, Rashad Berry. Right now, I just feel like those two have a great chemistry. They run the floor so well in transition. Both guys can defend. And when both guys get going, Lorain's just so difficult to stop as it is. When those two guys get going, good luck trying to slow the Titans down.
A lot of good duos definitely in the area, though. And we are now joined by Bedford coach Pete Priola. Coach, how you doing?
Good, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
All right, I guess maybe a little bit of technical difficulties there. And when you look at Bedford, let's talk about Bedford before we start talking to Coach. Only 2 losses on the season. Against Cleveland Central Catholic was one of them. They've played some very good competition. St. Edward's was the other one, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Where's this team at right now, kind of where you expected it to be?
Well, I'm really eager to see how they do on Friday against Lorain because they had those 2 games, Central Catholic and St. Edward, where they lost. But they played well, but they still lost. They beat Warrensville Heights, who is a solid team. But this is a huge test for them. On the road, against Lorain, this is going to be a big game.
And Tim, if for someone who hasn't seen Bedford, and we were able to see him at the Scholastic Play-by-Play Classic, what type of team is this?
It's a very balanced team. It's a team that doesn't rely on one guy. They have a committee of guys who can all really take over at any time in a game. And when I look at Bedford, the one thing that sticks out to me when you look at who they've played and the things they've done as far as the offense goes, their magic number is 60. When they score 60, they're undefeated. When they don't score 60 is when they've had their 2 losses, when they've fallen short of that number.
That's good research right there, Tim. Definitely a very interesting thing that you got to keep an eye for. And really, if there's one thing that maybe about this Bedford team you guys don't like or you want to see them develop or something, what would it be?
To me, it's just that killer instinct to be able to go in there and know they're going to beat one of these really good teams. I think they've come close a couple times, but I've seen, Myron Pruitt has been a great player, but some of their other players really have to step up in the big spotlight.
Tim?
Yeah, and I mentioned their balance. I think the big thing is they need to figure out who's going to be the guy with 2 minutes to go. You need a bucket. Who's going to get you that bucket on a consistent basis?
All right, and now we are joined by Bedford coach Pete Priola. Coach, how you doing?
Good, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
No problem. Coach, you guys are off to a very good start this season with losses to only Cleveland Central Catholic and St. Edward. You got some big games coming up this weekend. You guys have played these type of teams. How important is it for you guys now to get a win against one of these top teams?
I think it's very important. I mean, we're at the halfway point in the season, and we're beating who we're supposed to beat, and now it's time to get over that hump and take our team to the next level.
Coach, I don't want to skip ahead here, but everyone is already talking about the game on Friday with Lorain. When you look at that game and at your own team, just talk about the athleticism that's going to be on the floor.
Well, Dave, you're killing me because trying to get my kids to worry about Euclid first, tomorrow, and then Lorain on Friday. But obviously playing them last year and playing them over the summer down in Kent State, we're very familiar with them as well as they are with us. So we're just looking to go out there on the road and steal a game in the LEL, and it's going to be tough. So we're going to come out ready to defend and rebound.
Coach, the one thing we talked about is the balance of this team, and when I look at the scoring guys have done, there's about 5-6 guys that are very similar in terms of the points they've scored so far in this season. How much of a benefit is that to not only have that kind of balance throughout your lineup, but also have a guy or two on the bench who can also produce a quick offense?
Yeah, I guess it's very beneficial because of the fact that when you look at a team with one dominant player or two, you can kind of game plan to take that person away or the other person away. And for us, it could be a different guy every night. I think we had 5 out of our 6 first games with a different guy that was a leading scorer. So this way it's harder for teams to game plan against us. And hopefully, down the road, guys just keep getting more experience, and we can be able to find that one player that we can get the ball to, like you said, in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Coach, you said obviously some big Lake Erie League games coming up, this week. Just talk about playing in the conference and how difficult it is every night.
Well, it's very difficult. I mean, anytime you got to go on the road in the LEL, I mean, we showed it last year at the end of the year. We were right there, in the lead for the league, and then we went on the road at Euclid, and they beat us, and they got hot, and went all the way to the district final. So we just try and tell our kids to take it one game at a time, and can't look ahead to anything, especially when we're playing teams in the LEL on the road.
Coach, sorry for the last one when we were looking ahead, but I'm going to kind of go back and now talk about the Euclid game. When you look at this game, everyone on your team knows the Lorain game is Friday. So what is the challenge of not having the team look ahead?
And then that's the thing you got to do with the kids, and you try and tell them one game at a time, one day at a time. And they've all been texting, and I mean, it's obvious it's the elephant in the room. They know that game lingers on Friday, and they're excited for it, but Tuesday comes before Friday, and we have to handle our business there, to keep pace with Lorain on Friday, to have a chance to compete when we're both undefeated on Friday.
Coach, no doubt the value of a non-conference schedule certainly speaks for itself come tournament time. You've played St. Ed's, you've played Central Catholic, later on you got St. Ignatius among others. With the tournament coming up tournament draw coming up in a few weeks, how important do you think is to continue to get the things going in non-conference and continue to get the quality of play you want in the LEL to make sure that you make the best possible case to get the highest possible seed in the postseason?
It's very important because obviously you said the seed meeting's coming up, and when you're going up against teams in your district to choose where you're going to be, and you have Garfield and Shaker and Menor and East Tech and all these top teams that are going to be there trying to battle for those top 1 through 5, 1 through 6 seeds, to have something to stand up and say, hey, this is our resume, this is what we did, these are the teams that we beat, and not just beating the teams we're supposed to, getting a couple wins on that resume to help us get boosted to a better seed would help greatly.
All right, Coach, you have a big week coming up. Best of luck, and thanks for taking time to join us today.
Thank you, guys, and pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, and definitely going to be an exciting week for Bedford. I think it's going to be one where we and Coach Priola really finds out how good his team is. When you look at it, Dave, what are you kind of expecting from him this week?
Well, I think even though he's a little worried, I think they'll take care of business on Tuesday against Euclid.
That's his job, though.
That is. And then, but Friday, I mean, I really don't know what to expect because, Bedford has played these top teams, Eds and Central Catholic, but Lorain really hasn't. I mean, their best game has been against Warrensville. I saw them on Friday. They look good, but I mean, I like both teams. I think they're real even. There's a reason they're 9 and 10 on our poll right now.
And that's the best part about our job. We get to speculate on the games. We don't have to worry about the in-game preparation stuff. But when you look at the top 25, Tim, now just to kind of talk about maybe some of the biggest movers, whether positive or negative for those teams.
Well, the biggest move certainly this week was St. Edward, going 3-0 this week, winning at Garfield Heights, and then going 2-0 in the Burger King Classic was a tremendous statement for the Eagles. And what they were able to do, and the reason I think they were able to have that success is their backcourt has really stepped over the last few games, particularly Deshaun Flannery, and seeing him against Garfield Heights, his ability to knock down big shots just opened things up for Kipper Nichols and DJ Funderburk and Darian Knowles. We talked about it, how I think their backcourt how good that's going to be is going to really push this team even further, because we know how good their front court is. We've said so many times about how good that front court is. If they can get production out of Darian Knowles and Sean Flannery in that backcourt, this team could go to another level.
And speaking with Coach Flannery in the offseason, everyone knew that it was going to take some time for this backcourt to really develop. Dave, what does the backcourt need to do? Not necessarily numbers, but what do they have to do? What's their main 2 or 3 jobs each night?
I mean, the main job is just to not to turn the ball. Don't turn the ball over. I mean, it doesn't matter how many points that those 2 guards score. If they're keeping possession of the ball, limiting turnovers, setting the other players up for good shots, they're going to win games. That's what St. Vincent-St-Mary does right now. You know, it might not be headlining names in the backcourt, but they limit turnovers and they get good shots.
All right, and then what was a team that maybe had a tough week last week that really needs to bounce back?
You know, I think obviously Garfield dropping a spot. Even though it was 1 spot, you know, the win against Brunswick on Friday was one they desperately needed to have to avoid a 3-game losing streak, and especially with the slate they had this week. They play Balboa today down at Kettering and flying the hoop. They got Strongsville Friday night, and then, you know, 22-foot Academy from South Carolina on Saturday. You know, this was a week where last week was a week where Garfield had to win a game to really, you know, create some momentum. And I know it's January, but talking to Sonny Johnson after the game, he did admit that that was kind of a must-win game. And what showed to me was that it was a 36-31 game, obviously a very defensive-oriented game, which is kind of what Brunswick wanted. But Garfield Heights beat another team at a different style, which is a good statement. So even though they dropped the spot, I think Garfield Heights still has to feel good about themselves.
I think that's a huge point, Tim, when you talk about that. Winning when you come in the postseason, you're not always going to be able to get up and down the floor, and to be able to win a defensive game, as you said, at Brunswick, with Brunswick playing exactly how they want, definitely a big week. And obviously, before we close the show, we'll talk more about it Wednesday, but Dunk for Diabetes this weekend. Is there one game that really sticks out to you?
I just want to see Omari Spellman back. Probably the game against Ed more so than the St. Joe's game, because North Royalton 2 years ago beat St. Edward in the tournament. They haven't played since, and it was a big upset at the time. So the fact that we get to see it again with different teams, that's a fun game.
All right, and Tim?
I got to go along the same lines, VHJ and McDuffie, because I think those are the 2 best teams, you know, that are going to be there. The best Ohio team, VHJ, and probably the best out-of-state team in McDuffie. See all those 2 match up and see if VHJ can bounce back from today's loss against Oak Hill in a very tough game.
All right, be sure to tune in on Wednesday for the Boys Basketball Podcast, as we'll probably go more in-depth to each of those games. And for Tim Bielik and David Cassilo, I'm Mark Kern.